Welcome to an unexpected and special episode of Over Underrated with Fran and Babs. I am Babs, and I'm here to introduce you to an extremely special guest. We have Chris Olley, the lead singer of 6x7. Now, why is Chris an extremely special guest? Basically, we talked about his band 6x7 in a previous episode. Fran picked them as an underrated band from Nottingham, and we got real deep into their discography, and I really adored them. I think it's my favourite band that Fran has introduced me so far on the podcast. Chris got in touch with us and said some very nice things, so we invited him to come on the podcast to discuss what he thought of what we said, whether he agreed or disagreed, and then we talked about more about 6x7. There's a lot of fun rock and roll stories. I don't know exactly what Fran's cut out yet, so let's see what makes it into the final edit. But we also talk about being on Jules Holland and his collaboration with Pete Holmstrom from the Dandy Warhols, what his life is like as a musician who makes music every single day. Lots of very interesting chat from Chris. But obviously this is still over underrated, so we also asked him to come up with 5 underrated songs by 5 of his favourite underrated acts. Some definitely more well-known than others, but it's quite an interesting selection of more electronic music and then rockier music. So yeah, enjoy this mad long episode. Chris is very honest and was very gracious to come on the podcast. Fran and I, we're a little bit concerned what it would be like to have someone whose music we talk to about on the podcast, but it was a really fun experience. So enjoy.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Över underskattad. Over underrated.
Welcome to a very special episode of Over Underrated. I am Babs, and I'm here with my co-host Fran. How are we today, Fran?
Happy New Year, everyone out there in the podcast world. I am doing fine, apart from a really bad back, but enough about me. How you doing, Babs?
Yeah, backs are evil. Pilates doesn't cure everything is what we're both learning, I think. I am good. I've been kind of nerding out on music this week because it was only recently that I realised you could connect Tidal to Last FM, and it gives you very nerdy stats every week, and I'm kind of on there every day looking at them.
What's your favourite stat so far?
Well, my favourite stat so far is that it's still telling me that Pet Shop Boys are my most listened to artist, because apparently I listened to them back in 2008 and it's just kept it. So I'm going to have to kind of usurp them. But what I like is it tells you what songs, how many times have you listened to a song in a week. So I know that, for example, my most listened to song last week was Tectonic by Tirza, and I listened to it 33 times, which is worrying.
So are we talking the same day?
No, over a week.
Okay.
Over a period of a week. Yeah.
Some serious listening going on there, Babs.
Serious scrubbling going on. How about you?
I've been listening to Secret Machines.
Heard of? Tell me more.
They kind of came out at the same time as like the Killers, like that kind of new wave sound, but they had more of like a Pink Floyd influence. So imagine the Killers, but with 8-minute long songs.
That personally doesn't sound up my street, but depends what era Killers. Are we talking first album only?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
All right then.
Yeah, I think people thought they were like another of those bands, like whose other band came out at the same time with the cool hair.
Oh, Bravery.
Right, yeah. People thought they were on the same sort of wave as the Bravery and the Killers, but they had a little bit more to them, but they never really sort of like broke through apart from their debut album. But give them a listen, guys, if out there.
It's another Fran band that didn't quite make it.
Yeah, the curse of my music taste.
The curse of the missed A&R man, Fran. But we are not alone today. We have an incredibly special guest. We have Chris Olley from 6x7 on the line. I was going to say, as if we're on the radio. Hello, Chris.
Hello. Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks.
Whereabouts are you today?
I'm in Nottingham, where I live.
Very good. So
I've just been in Wales for the weekend. For last weekend for recording at Rockfield Studios. So that was good.
We're definitely going to get into that because that seems to be, I was going to call it a bit of a pilgrimage that you do a few times a year to those studios to record some music with your fans. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris has come on because he messaged very kindly and said he'd enjoyed listening to our podcast. And Fran and I have to say, are kind of terrified because we're usually very honest in the podcast. We don't expect people to listen to us. And the fact that you didn't message us being like, oh, thanks for calling me a prick, we very much appreciate it. And we're very glad that you've graciously come on.
Luckily,
today.
it's the underrated band rather than the overrated
Yes.
band. That would be.
I would be surprised if London Grammar get in touch with us.
If John Bon Jovi gets on the line, I'll be shocked, to be fair.
But you said, Chris, that when you were listening to the podcast, you felt like you kind of wanted to respond to some of the things that we said. So, I mean, how was it listening to it? And how is it in general as a musician listening to yourself being talked about on podcasts and written about in the press?
I find it quite interesting. What was interesting, really, was some of the things that you said, which sounded, which could be kind of misinterpreted as negative. Like, for example, you talked about arrogance, and I thought, yeah, the band, for the first time in my life, I thought maybe that's because of the way. It's a weird one because it's the way we behaved. You can come across as arrogant. We actually, like, for example, Fran said you were talking about us recording the third album live and putting the vocals down, and Fran said that in itself could be construed as quite arrogant, and I thought that was interesting because that's almost like a plumber coming around and fixing your radiator, and you going, "Oh, that's the way you did that was slightly arrogant," because like bands through the ages have all recorded like that. That's a normal way of recording, to go into the studio and put it down live. However, what's not normal is then for me to go out and do 35 interviews in a day. And each time I say, well, we recorded the album live, because to be honest with you, a lot of bands weren't doing that around that time. And the only reason we did it was because the guitar player had just left and I was shitting myself and I wanted it. I said to the boys, look, I mean, let's just play it live because otherwise I'm going to start overdubbing Sam kind of type guitars. Sam was the guy that left, and I didn't want to do that. So a really good thing to do is to make a rule and just go, well, we're just going to play it live. Yeah. So that, but when you've been like, when you're doing press trips and you go over to Amsterdam and they put you in a hotel room and you've got to speak to 30 people and they all get 20 minutes each, and you start saying this over and over again, and then it gets written down and it looks different. And so much of what I used to say, because used to it's like this podcast, if you wanted to, you could take it and you could edit it and you could make me sound like a certain person or whatever. But and I found was with the music press and in general was that they're always looking for an angle, and they're always trying to put us in a kind of put us in that kind of bracket, really. Because I mean, I remember being thrown out of 3 MTV interviews, one in Sweden, one in Spain, and where was the other one? Oh yeah, Greece. And we actually they actually said, get out of our studio because we don't want you in here. Because, I mean, we went to Greece, right? And we'd had a few beers on the plane. And then when we got there, the guy picked us up, gave us a pack, pulled over into the off license, got us more beers. We were with Tim from Death in Vegas, who was on tour with us. He was just a mate. He'd just recorded us. And we were like, do you want to come on tour with us to Greece? So then we went to... they took us straight to MTV and said, oh, you've got to do this MTV thing. And we went there and we all sat on the sofa together. There was 4 of us, and this lovely girl comes out and sits there. And then this Greek guy comes over to us and he says, we're going on air in 15 seconds. Don't mention gay people. And and we kind of looked at each other and went. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, we don't like talking about gay people on the telly in Greece."
Was that in any of your song lyrics? Was there any reason for that, or
I don't know why he said it. And then I mean, it was completely homophobic. It was fucking outrageous, And then he went, "Right, you're on it. 5, 4, 3. Right, you're live." And then this girl turned around and said, "Oh, hello, boys. You've just flown in from Gatwick and landed. And how's Greece?" And the first thing I said, "Well, it was all right, but I got fucked up the ass in the in the airport." And we just did the whole interview like that. Every time she asked us a question, we said, that's what we were like. We were like a kind of twisted version of the Beatles, None of us took any of it seriously. We were just not these, And so when I heard your podcast, I was thinking about all these kind of things and how we used to behave. And if anything, we were sort of like, the opposite of arrogant. We weren't intimidated by them, and we never felt they were important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that went against the band. After I came out of it and we looked at it, it was like, and if you piss people off by doing things like that, they'll probably, write negatively about you.
So do you think if you had like things like podcasts back in the day when you could have a long form, you could be yourself, you might have come out differently? Because obviously it's like when we're doing the podcast,
I was thinking
when we're doing the podcast, like it's hard to find a lot of information around that sort of time, like interviews. You're quite limited to find out how you were really. So like a lot of our opinions were coming from like that documentary, the Beat the 6 Meters documentary on YouTube, and little snippets. So it's kind of hard to sort of really get a picture because like you haven't got dozens of music videos and dozens of like interviews on YouTube, so it's kind of
no. There was that film that Beggars did, and then there was I don't know if you watched the Channel 4 film about us. They made a film about us on Channel 4 where we're just kind of sitting at this table going, "We're into Spaceman 3 actually." I mean, really, and and then the other thing was that phoners, when you do phoners. So what happens is you're told to sit by the phone for the record label say, "Right, Chris, on Tuesday between 10 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're just going to sit by the phone and do interviews," right? So you sit there, and what happens is the phone rings and the record label, they say, "Right, we're now going to put you through to Fran at or Babs, and she's going to ask you some questions," and then I'd put the phone down, and then the phone would ring, and it would be Fran, and he'd be saying, "All right, Chris, you just finished the first album," and we'd talk and that, and this one day I was doing it, and I got every single person ended the conversation in the same way, and I thought, what the fuck's going on here? This is really weird. And they were going, "Listen, Chris, I know I've got to finish now, but I just want to say, you strike me as a really nice person." And I'd be like, "Oh, thanks." Well, and after a while I was thinking, what? They must all think I'm not very nice. And now they're saying, "Oh, we're quite shocked that you're all right." So this went on, and then by the end of the afternoon, I said to this guy, I actually asked one of them, I said, "What's going on? What, why did you just say that? Were you expecting me to be a wrong un?" And he went, "Well, your record label told us that you're really difficult and obnoxious." Wow. So the record label were telling everybody, they were going, "Right, when you ring this number, Chris will give you 15 minutes. We just want to let you know he's a sod."
Was that on like the back of like the 90s like post-Oasis sort of like thing when they wanted people to be a bit prickly to get some more airtime or something? Was it part of that, or
they didn't really know how to market us? And then they thought, I mean, on the third album, I wrote a song called Bad Man, and they were like, "We've got to call the album Bad Man." And I was like, no, hang on a minute. you know. So, and I still get it to this day. People come up to me, they talk to me, and they're like, "I thought you'd be like a really arrogant, twisted sod." I'm like, "Yeah, it's funny that I'm not, am I?" They're like, "No, actually, you're quite nice." All right, thanks.
It's weird that people will match the music to the personality. Like you could do like the most sunshine pop ever and be like Phil Spector, you know, or you know, you can write quite angry sounding songs and be nice. People sometimes find it hard to separate the music from the person, maybe.
Exactly, and it started straight away, Fran, when we did we did a show at the Water Rats, which was immediately picked up by the enemy. We started playing all these shows, and the enemy and the Melody Maker were falling over themselves to come and watch us, because that's another thing that the band that went against the band was the live experience, which was absolutely thunderous. And people used to come and watch it and be like, "Fucking hell." These people at the Inky Press, they had nothing better to do than to keep going out and watching bands all the time. That's what they were paid to do. And along we came and we blew all the cobwebs out, and then they were writing about the band. "Fucking hell, this band is brilliant." And then the record came out, it didn't sound anything like what we were live, because it very rarely does. And luckily on the second album, when we worked with John Leckie, you know, I remember John Leckie came up to me and said, we were playing on the first album, he came up to me and he said, "You sound amazing, but you know, your record is crap in comparison to what you sound like live." And I said, "Well, why don't you come and fix it for us?" And he said, "I will." And he came down and produced the second album, fixed some of it. But yeah, I mean, you know, the other thing was that I was quite shy at the time. I'm like a kid in a candy store when I'm writing songs and I'm in a studio. But when it comes to going on stage, as soon as my foot hit the stage, I used to turn into a different person to protect myself while I was on stage. So I would often say like abrasive things, and people used to be a bit frightened. I'm 6'4", so people were a bit like.
But that's exactly what I wanted, because I listened back to our podcast today to kind of see what I had said, and I think because obviously I hadn't heard of you. I was coming across it fresh, only from, you know, Fran's playlist and the interviews, and I wondered really whether was it arrogance, or was it just a band who didn't want to play that game of the press, or a band that I think I said at one point, maybe they're just lovely, sensitive boys, and this is how they come across. So it sounds like maybe it was a bit more of that then in the end.
A bit what, that we were lovely, sensitive
boys, yeah. But you were just defensive, you know, like you know, you weren't doing it in a kind of, I don't know, Towers of London, you know, way to piss off the press. It was just that you were trying to, you know, answer the questions as you were given, and you know, not be fake, and not play the game.
I think that goes against you, if you behave like that, because I mean, it was a joke, you know, and that's what the second album is about. A lot of the second album was us, well, particularly me, writing about the realization of what we had gotten ourselves into. And the rest of the band were like completely, you know, went along with that because they were in the same boat, and we were all kind of, you know, we were all sitting there by the second album going, "This is pretty much over," you know, because that's the way it was.
You got into Jules Holland. Did that not give you any more push or anything?
Well, that was amazing. You know, that I'm playing on that show. I remember. I mean, we were so loud on that. I mean, the great thing about Jules Holland is, I don't know what it's like now, but back then you had to take your own gear, like PA, monitor setup. So basically what you did was you hired in the wedges and everything, and then you put it up, and you turned it up to work. Normally when you do TV shows, you can't play very loud. There's people walking around and telling you what to do, and you know, TV's horrible. It really is. It's the worst thing you can do. They treat you really bad. But when you go to the BBC, when we were doing Jules Holland, they're basically like, if you play at the volume of a jet taking off, then we encourage you to play at that volume on the show. So what you end up with is all these bands playing exactly like they would play. And Mark Cooper, the guy that does Jules Holland, is extremely clever because he knows that brings out the best in the band.
To me, watching that performance, is that the closest I could have got to seeing you back in the 90s, basically?
Yeah.
Because it's a great performance. But were you offered any other TV shows, or was that basically it in that?
Well,
yeah, around that sort of time. I guess like TFI Friday probably ended by then. I don't know many other music shows around.
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, the great thing about Jules Holland was that as we were finishing the last song, "Oh Dear," it's got this massive ending, and it was so loud in there, and I actually smashed my guitar up, and I remember playing this guitar, and I remember thinking, I'm gonna like throw this guitar that no one's ever done this on Jules Holland, you know, and I got my guitar and I bounced off the floor and then I threw it right up into the rafters. And I looked up and I thought, fucking hell, it's coming back down. And I ran out of the way and it pranged on the floor and everything. And everyone was going, oh my God. And they cut it out.
Oh.
And also, another thing is, you're only as good as your manager. So if we'd have been The Who, Kit Lambert would have been up in the cutting room straight away going, if anyone cuts that out, I'm taking their kneecaps off. Do you know what I mean? But our manager never did that. So, you know, I was the first person to do that on Jules Holland, but I wasn't. And then later on, I think a band called At the Drive-In did it.
Oh, yeah.
And they showed it. And, but to be fair, afterwards, when I was in the green room with Jules Holland, the technician came up to me and said, sorry to see you were having problems with your guitar at the end there, old chap. I was like, no, I wasn't having any problems. I wanted to be the first person on Jules Holland to hurl a guitar around.
You still are, technically.
Yeah, just
counts.
because it hasn't shown.
Not.
Just because it hasn't
No,
shown.
that's the whole thing, Fran. I'm not, because it wasn't shown, so it didn't happen. It's not part of history.
Do you know what, Chris? It's quite frustrating because I have a good friend and an upcoming guest who is head of archives at ITV, but not BBC. If it was BBC, I might still be able to ask him because he has contacts, but I do wonder if that is somewhere and could be accessed.
Too late, Barbara. Yeah. It's too late.
It's too late. The moment's gone.
Can I ask my 5 songs I chose to give to Babs?
10 songs.
Was it 10 size? It's a long time ago. Did you agree with those selections? I know you're a big fan of all my friends. All
my new best friends.
Yeah, but is there any particular song that you would have liked to put on a playlist to show off the band?
I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, I remember, Babs, you really liked Another Love Song, didn't you?
And So Close as well.
Yeah.
They were, yeah.
Live, they were absolutely pulverizing. You know, they were really great. When I looked down at the set list and saw them songs, I was like, this is going to be great, you know. So they were good choices. I was surprised that you picked something off the Peveril album because that's all just leftovers.
Yeah, but sometimes the leftovers, they got some decent things. But no, there's a few songs from the album I thought, you know, maybe if it was given more chance or produced differently, it would be a hit because I think there's some great tracks on that.
Yeah. I think lots of people said that. Some people actually when we released 04 and then we did that as a money-making thing on the internet, really, because we were like, wow, we've got all these songs left over, and we had our own. I'd formed my own record label then, so let's get all these leftovers and put it on here and flog it. And we made like, you know, 8,000 quid straight away out of that, and it kept us going for, you know, another 8 months or whatever. But you picked Bochum, didn't you?
Yeah.
Light Up My Life. Yeah, that's a great song. What else did you pick? I can't remember now.
Well, Oh Dear was the finishing track.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you have to finish with that, don't you?
Yeah.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Överschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
So after that 2000 and I think it's a 5 album that like B-side.
There's the one with Steve Hewitt on it.
Yeah. So that's the first album I heard, and I believe you've done some releases before that, but I don't think they're on Spotify or available on CD. Well, I couldn't find any.
No, there's nothing really to
No.
listen to. No, but there's stuff after that.
Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, I had like Left Luggage on CD, and then I remember that the album of Steve Hewitt came out, and then I found out afterwards that there was like some music happened in an 8-year period, but
Yeah,
it doesn't seem to be anywhere to hear. So
the trouble is that once you've been dropped by a major record label, you're finished. It's over. You only get one shot, and if it doesn't work, then it's see you later.
Fran and I have talked about that a lot, especially in the British context, because we were saying how some bands who are actually very long lasting, there's this attitude of like, what? They're still making an album? What the hell? No, we're trying to move on to the next thing. Like one of my favorite bands that we talk about often is Blood Red Shoes, who've been going since 2008. And their 6th album, I think, you know, if it's not their best, it's one of. And yet it just doesn't seem to kind of break through. Yeah, in, I think, France and Germany, they have a lot more fans. So yeah, I think... I wonder if that's also the fact that you were a British band in that context.
The UK is very much like the new thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. There is no more. You know, back in the old days, you know, U2, Led Zeppelin. I mean, all these bands would have been dropped after the first album if it didn't make it. I mean, and quite often, I mean, why shouldn't I be a better songwriter now than I was before? Because I've been doing it for longer. I mean, there's certain periods in your life that you write a certain kind of music. I'm always changing anyway because I get bored if I can't just do the same thing over and over, you know. And Babs, you said something really interesting as well, which I thought was great when you said there was a lot of bands around that time getting signed and disappearing, and it was almost like just before we got signed, and we were friends with a band called Bivouac, and they were from Derby, and there was these bands like Girls Against Boys and Bivouac, and like they were signing to Geffen for like millions, you know, just huge amounts of money, and this record label Geffen, sort of after Nirvana and that, it was hoovering up anything that was, you know, and then it calmed down a little bit and they got a little bit more selective, but there was still a lot of people being signed, you know, that like Dawn of the Replicants, and you know, and they a lot of those bands, they like when we got signed, the band that everybody was talking about was a band called Ultrasound.
Yeah.
And they had this big fat singer. Am I allowed to say that? Or is that?
It's factual.
Will I get cancelled now?
Isn't he called Tiny? I want.
He's called Tiny.
I was going to say I'm fat and I call myself fat, so it's fine as long as it's factual.
I mean, you got to be quite brave for David Rabin to be a double disc. To be fair.
Yeah, with you doing an abstract expressionist painting, and the whole pullout is of you doing it. I mean, come on. And I remember. We played a few gigs with them. They're lovely guys. They're from Wakefield, I think, and they were like, you know, we're going to sign to Mute Records for gazillions, and we signed our deal really quickly. You know, we just we asked Geffen asked us to do some demos. They passed on the band. We gave the demos to beggars, and they put them out, and then we were off. You know.
Yeah. Just to say, I think what I said was that the timing was post grunge, just as Britpop was happening, pre indie rock revival, right? So the rock music that was going to become big was nu metal, which obviously you're not. So yeah, I think it was bad timing.
Absolutely. And what you mustn't forget about that time is everybody was dropping E's, going to Creamfields, Gatecrasher, listening to Fatboy Slim and the Chemical Brothers. It was the era of the super DJ. Like the Enemy were like talking about the Beta Band and Ultrasound, and it was all a bit crap, to be honest. Like Gay Dad and bands like that were being, you know, on the front cover. We were like, what are they doing on the front cover? And the thing is, what we realized then is that if you didn't sell a certain threshold, you were never going to get this kind of coverage. It didn't matter. We were like, oh, so it doesn't matter how good you are. No, it doesn't matter how much the Enemy love you or how great they think you are. It matters how much revenue your record label's putting into the newspaper.
Mhm.
That's where it goes. And then, you know, and that we at that point we were like, well, that's us fucked then, isn't it?
But you do kind of dabble with electronic music. Was there pressure around that time to maybe go down a more electronic dancey route?
Well, yeah, because the thing about us lot was that we only ever listened to electronic music. All the ideas that we got about big build-ups and you know, making these, like Another Love Song, for example, you described that as a kind of symbiotic coming together of, you know, dance music and sort of it's almost like My Bloody Valentine playing kind of jungle, if you like. We all decided that there was never going to be another rock record as good as Highway to Hell by AC/DC. And we felt that everything after it was just trying to be something like that. And so we, on the tour bus, we only ever listened to electronic music.
What sort of music we listened to? What sort of electronic? Was it Aphex Twin, or what sort of sounds was it?
Plastic Man.
Okay.
We listened to a lot. We listened to a lot of Luke Viber, stuff like that. You know, anything on Warp Records, Ninja Tunes, and the only record that we listened to that wasn't like that was If You Want Blood by AC/DC, which is a live album. And we used to put that on after gigs and, you know, drink beer and play that full blast in the van or in the tour bus. But that was the only record that we listened to that was like that. You know, people thought that we were just these kind of Neil Young worshipping monks. And we were absolutely sort of right on the nail with electronic music. You know?
I can't hear a lot of AC/DC in your music, to be fair.
And I would say don't listen to our AC/DC episode, Chris, because you might not agree with us on that.
So a couple of years later, when bands like the Cooper Temple Claws and Kasabian came out mixing electronic and guitar music and being hailed as like this exciting thing, it must have been a bit annoying thinking that I did this like 4 years ago.
The great thing was when I was listening to the podcast, you kept on making references to Kasabian. You were saying, "Oh man, if you listen to Candlelight, that song Candlelight." One of you said like, "This could almost be a Kasabian track before Kasabian, proto Kasabian." A lot of work. Now then, because we're from Nottingham, we used to go and play in Leicester at the Charlotte a lot.
This is what we wanted. Yeah.
Kasabian supported us twice.
There we go.
There we go.
They weren't called Kasabian though; they were called Syracuse or something like that, or Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember one of them from the band. I think it was the singer,
Tom.
He came up to me one night and he went, "You guys are fucking brilliant. We want to be more like you."
Well,
and looks like they did.
A little bit Oasis, a little bit 6x7, and you get to make a lot of.
Yeah, when they supported us, they sounded like a bunch of, because they were only 17 or 18 years old back then. I think they were like oiks, and they sounded like a piss poor Oasis to me, you know. But their first album's brilliant.
Yeah.
When the first album came out, I was like, I couldn't stop listening to it. I loved it.
Yeah. But I think that was a lot. Obviously, again, we've done a Kasabian episode where I defended them as not being overrated. So Fran's more skepticism, but I think he came around a little bit.
Yeah, the debut's the best album still, to be fair.
Yeah, brilliant.
Maybe not for me, but that's another time. That's another time. But yeah, I do still think Sergio is a genius, but I think part of the genius of that first album was Chris Karloff, and he then went to do other things. And I was actually listening to his other band. I think they're called Black Onassis, and they've got some really good electronic shit. That's the year. But I think Kasabian are an example of a band who maybe not necessarily played the game, but it was like they were proper in your face with the music press. And I think on the episode we talked about how I have a memory of reading about Kasabian in the NME, and NME were writing about them like, oh, you know, Kasabian, they think they're well hard, but they still live with their mums, right? And that was the impression that they gave and how they came across. But I think there was definitely, you know, post Oasis's boom, a gap, and they filled it, as I think Fran said on the podcast. But there we go.
So you mentioned that you were quite anxious or uncomfortable playing live. So obviously you do a lot of work in your studio. Do you miss performing live, or is that something you're happy to stay away from?
I don't miss performing live at all. I mean, I used to throw up before going on stage. I mean, I used to sort of say to myself, "What am I doing here? I mean, what's going on? Why am I here?" You know.
I guess a lot of the money these days from being a musician is to perform live, though.
A lot of the publicity, I mean, but back then it was different. I mean, I figured out, I'd been in different bands, and I figured out that it was really easy to get a record deal. I mean, it really is easy. If you want a record deal, but if you wanted a record deal back then, all right, there's just a couple of things you've got to do, and that's hang out with people who turn up on time. You can't be in a band if you've got a drummer who's 4 hours late. I mean, just forget it. And I went to university, and we were a college band. We were an art school band, and everybody that was in the band wanted to do it. And we went into the rehearsal room, and I said, let's try this. And then all you've got to do is figure out, how to keep it simple. And then it's not repetition, it's discipline. And what you've got to do is you just got to keep it pinned down and keep it simple. I hammered that into the boys, and we just did that, and then we got better and better, and then you just unleash yourself, and you'll get signed. It's really easy.
But maybe it's easy to get any record deal, but maybe not a good record deal, right? As you mentioned.
Well, no, you don't. I mean, that's the thing. Is like you sign with a record label that's got your favorite band on it. That's what you do. You just wait until they offer you. And we got offered loads of deals, and we waited for Beggars Banquet because they had Mercury Rev, and we were just waiting to sign to them. And then Mercury Rev were gone when we got there. So we were going, "Where's Mercury Rev? Can we meet them?" And then we don't have anything to do with them anymore. And one of them's in a monastery. The band split up, and this was before Deserters.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right.
And then they signed a big deal with someone else and brought out Desert songs and went massive.
Do you still go to gigs now to watch bands, or? I'm
going to see Gaz Coombs on Sunday.
Oh, great.
But other than that, for me now, going to a gig, I like to go to arena gigs because you can sit down and have a drink and watch someone like, 9 Inch Nails or Neil Young or something,
I know that you recently recorded a podcast at Rockfield Studios, so I don't know if this is maybe something that's been asked before, but what really intrigued me from watching the documentary and from kind of talking to you online before coming on, I mean, you told me that you make music every single day, which is extraordinary. And yeah, it would be really great if you could tell us what a day in the life of Chris Olley is like, and how you managed to live your life doing that, because I feel, personally, how many people are able to do that must be amazing.
Well, you only get one life, and I thought, I always thought I'll try and do with it something that I want to do, and I've managed to. Like in that documentary, I think there's one bit where I say, you get your online sales, you get your royalties, you get this, and you get a little bit of this, and you do some live gigs, and hey presto, you've got yourself a job. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I've done. And so, yeah, I get up. I get up anywhere between sort of 5 and 7. And
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll come into the studio and I'll mess around with the Mini Moog or something, or the Prophet 5, and I'll get something going, and then I'll write a song around it. It doesn't take me long. I kind of follow the Elton John, Paul McCartney school, where I think Elton John doesn't spend longer than 3/4 of an hour writing a song. And Paul McCartney's 3 hours. He says, well, if you ain't got it in 3 hours, forget about it, do something else. I don't use computers. I record with traditional means,
Mm-hmm.
So I find that the technology of computers slows you down.
Oh, wow.
When you're writing a song, are you playing a keyboard or are you playing guitar?
doesn't matter. I mean, you know, I'll sample something. I might hear something while I'm having breakfast. I don't know. I mean, I generally the way that I tend to work is I set myself parameters to work within, so that I don't go spiraling off all over the place. But the trouble is that I'm so adept at it that I can easily write one song a day, and I end up with 31 songs at the end of the month. So I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I give a lot away on Patreon. I just put it on Patreon, and people pay me some money on Patreon, and then I just put. Do you know what? I've been doing it a year or something, and someone posted a couple of weeks ago. They put, "Yay, that's Chris's 100th song he's given us." And I thought, well, Jesus Christ! But
clearly, I need to sign up for the Patreon as well. Like what immediately came to my mind? I'm guessing it would be difficult, and you have your method. Have you ever thought about kind of writing for other people? Then, kind of writing with other songwriters, because that way. Yeah, I guess it sounds like you don't need to make any more money. You're okay, but that might be a way to make more money.
I could always do with more money because with more money it brings more opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I could give more free CDs away, or I could go to I could hire a musician to help me or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I did do that. Yeah, there's one type of music that I find absolutely really, really easy to write, and that's country and western. I can write country and western music I just find it really easy. I don't know why. And I did I did some demos, and I sent them really, sort of. I used to play in a country and western band, in Germany, and.
Right.
And I kind of love Merle Haggard and all Dwight Yoakam, and there was about 30 years ago there was a lot of young country guys coming through. It was really, really kind of proper country though. It wasn't like it wasn't like Americana. It wasn't sort of like a modern take. It was traditional, proper, Dolly Parton kind of stuff.
Right.
And I used to write songs. I'd come into and I'd play this song to the band, and they were like, "Who's that by?" And I'd go, "I wrote it about half an hour ago." And they'd go, "No, you didn't." I go, "Yeah, I did actually." And they go, "No, you're full of shit." Like, "Who's that by? Is it a Dwight Yoakam?" And I'd say, "No, actually, I wrote this." Anyway, so what I did was I sat down and I wrote some really catchy, kind of cheesy country songs, and I sent them to this company in Germany because Germany's massive country western music. She wrote back to me and she was like, "Yes, we'll take you on, and we want you to write songs for us." And I started doing it, and then I just stopped because I thought, "Fucking hell, what are you doing? You're writing country and western songs for money. Stop! This is no way to live your life." And also the other thing was the quality that they wanted was out of my range. It was like I had to go to a really big studio and record it all properly and then hand it over to them. And I was like, that's like too much really. So I got bored of it and stopped. But no, I'd really love it if someone else kind of took my songs and made them better, and had a hit. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? But
listeners, if you're out there, let us know. You've listened to our 6x7 episode. You know what Chris's music sounds like. Come on, guys.
With such a vast back catalogue, is there like a song that kind of got away from you? Like you thought was going to be great, but you never could record how you wanted the sound? Was there like a...
All of them.
Oh, really?
Always perfection to
but you wouldn't go back and re-record anything at all. Are you always moving forward?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
The first album is terrible. I mean, that really is nobody in the band. I listened to it once. Me and the keyboard player. We were once in the studio and we put the first album on. He was, should we do it? Yeah, fuck it. Let's listen to it. And we were like, and we actually listened. That was the one and only time I ever listened to it. You know.
Wow.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
You have a collaboration with Peter Holmstrom from the Dandy Warhols. I saw him tweeting about it recently. How did that come about? Because I you guys toured with them, right? 6x7.
Yeah. We supported the Dandy Warhols on their first ever tour.
Nice.
Over here when they came over. We did a gig in Amsterdam and they were playing it as well. It was called London Calling. They used to do this thing in Amsterdam.
They still do.
Do they still do London?
It sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, I was in Amsterdam and the Albert Hammond Jr. was headlining it, and the support band was Sam Fender.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Isn't he like massive?
Yeah, no, I saw Swarm play to like 50 half-drunk Dutch people, and now he's like headlining festivals. So yeah, and that was called London Calling. That was like 2018. So yeah.
And is it in the Paradiso?
Yeah. And it had like three different gigs going on at the same time, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I was like, it's like 20 euros, yes, please. Yeah.
But Paradiso, that was when the Germans invaded Holland in the Second World War. The Gestapo took over the Paradiso, and when you go down into the dressing rooms downstairs, they're torture chambers.
Oh, really?
So you're sitting in a torture chamber before you go upstairs to play your gig.
Sam Fender in a torture chamber. There you go.
Sounds like some kind of twisted charades there, but there we go.
So the Dandies saw us there. We got back home and they'd phoned us up and they said, look, we're coming on tour, doing our first, can you support us? And
amazing.
I've been friends with them ever since. And me and Pete were always on about doing something. And then finally we got round to doing it. It's called Walls of Dada, yeah. And he came to stay with me I was in the summer. He stayed at my house here for about 10 days in this room actually.
Oh.
And we did a gig together at the Rough Trade Shop, and then we went to Rockfield and recorded this album. Yeah,
incredible.
It's great.
I'm definitely going to listen to it. I think Dandy Warhols, I've always enjoyed some of their music, but I saw them on their 25th anniversary tour and they played a lot of their back catalogue and they really blew me away. And I've been going through their discography. I think they're one of the bands with the best discography out there. Almost. I need to listen to all of it, but I will definitely be listening to Walls of Dada.
That's another thing that you said about the band not making it. I've just remembered that was one of the other things you said. Each song's different.
Yeah.
And then you said that in that film, I said we were trying to make music that was fitting into our record collections that wasn't there. That's literally what we were trying to do. I mean, that wasn't like we felt that was quite a positive way to be in a band.
It is. It is, but the problem is for the music press who, like, what can they do? I mean, what I saw more than anything was the new Radiohead, and that's not accurate, at all. And I think that's it. And I can understand it from both sides, because I think as a musician, it must be incredibly frustrating when you're trying to describe what you're trying to do, and then you feel that gets twisted. But I know that as a music lover, because there's just, I mean, especially now, there's so much new music out there, that if there isn't a kind of hook for me, if I especially now, if I see a tweet about someone, if there isn't a hook, unless I see a picture and they look interesting, why am I going to go and listen to it? So on a recent podcast, I talked about listening to this rapper called Clip, who I went and clicked on the NME article because it said she makes Lana Del Rey sad girl rap, and I thought, well, hello there, what the fuck is that? Gonna click on that, because if it was just like, listen to this new American rapper from New York, that would have been interesting. And I think, again, from my lack of knowledge about 6x7, the playlist, I thought, as I think I said on the podcast, because we'd done an episode on Munson and Fran is a big fan, and he's a big fan of a lot of Britpop acts, I thought it was going to be something like that. Not only was it not that, but every single song was different. So it's very difficult, I think, if you're a music journalist to accurately represent that. You have to be a very good journalist to do that.
I mean, on the album, The Way I Feel Today, the third album, you got so close, right? And then it goes into this song which is called All My New Best Friends, which I played on Noel Gallagher's Wonderwall guitar.
Yeah. Wow.
And we had Shirley Bassey's string section. And it's this gorgeous song. And then this song fades out. We ended the song by pulling the lead out of the Hammond organ.
Mm-hmm.
You pull the lead out of the Hammond organ, and it goes like that. And then the next thing, I go, I never promised you shit, and it goes into this rip-roaring punk song. I mean, that's where we went wrong.
Well, I was thinking that tactic would work much better these days now that people listen to albums or the way that music is released. It's so much more like song, way in advance. And then Fran and I talk about all the time about how we're both big music fans. You can see all my CDs behind me, but we listen to albums so much more rarely these days, because in part we're like, there's so much new music, must go out and seek it out. But of course there's pleasure in taking a step back and listening to an album. And I loved the fact that Fran put a playlist together of your songs that sounded like it could have been from a lot of different bands. But yeah, I think it must be difficult to kind of explain that.
Well, I think in the podcast you hit the nail on the head, because you kept on going, I listened to this one song and I thought, right, that sounds brilliant. And then I went to the next song, it was completely different, but it was really good. And then I went to the next song, it's completely different again. But you know what? I really like it. In fact, I like all three. And then you start to think, well, the lineup of the band was the same. I mean, we had an organ player, we had two guitarists, a singer, and a drummer and a bass player, and it was like, so, I mean, you kind of do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I've got this theory that your body it ebbs and flows. We're water mainly, and we ebb and flow, and we fluctuate in our thoughts, and we I mean, I've got this little dog, and when you take it out for a walk and it's windy, the dog reacts in a different way. So, as living things, we react differently to, we go through different moods. Like, you might want to go to the gym every day, but maybe at the third day you don't want to go because, you have to force yourself, or not that I go to the gym.
I was thinking, like, that's not me.
No, what a boring way to spend your life. Yeah. But anyway, so the thing is, I think it's the same with music, and I believe that, if we would go down the rehearsal room and we would talk about the song that we were going to write, the kind of song that we were going to make, and if it was going to be Stoogesy, it was going to be Stoogesy. We never thought about marketing or what the enemy might think. Never came into it.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't have to contend with social media in those days either, because that is a blessing and a curse, it seems, for musicians these days. Are you going to do a TikTok dance, Chris? I can see some, there's a fantastic podcast called Switched on Pop that I listened to, and their latest episode was talking about how on TikTok at the moment there's this trend for sped up songs, like sped up remixes and songs. I can see plenty of 6x7 songs getting that treatment. I can imagine a speeded up Eat Junk, Become Junk, and getting really popular. But I have to say, kind of glad that you're not doing that.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
Who are you working with in the studio at the moment? Because I saw some clips on Facebook, and your drummer seemed pretty wicked.
That's my son.
Is it son?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I said wicked. I've not said wicked since about 1994. So
is it because we have a guest who made music in the 90s?
The drummer gets wicked.
The drummer gets wicked. No, Charlie, he's been playing drums since he was 8 years old. And, when we had Steve from Placebo in the band, he was like showing him a load of tricks.
Oh, that is a good drummer to learn tricks from.
So, yeah, Steve kind of taught him how to play drums a bit. And, so Charlie's developed into this fantastic drummer. And I mean, that, when you said, 6x7 in name only, really, I mean, you're right. It is just Chris Olley. And the only thing I can't play really is that, I mean, I'm not a great musician, but I can I can play a bit of keyboards and a bass and a guitar, and I can sing. And one thing I can't do is play the drums. But Charlie's like, he's brilliant, and he's played on loads of my stuff, and he always comes to Rockfield and wherever. So we just went to Rockfield, and I produced an album for a friend of mine called Gentle Eels Devotion, and then we were working with Paul Sandra down there, who's I used to work a lot with Julian Cope, and Paul Sandra worked with Julian just before me, and Paul Sandra, he's in Hawkwind, and he was in Spiritualized, and he's done. He's just done loads of stuff, brilliant, and we had an absolutely fantastic time down there with him. Just he collaborated on like making the Moog sound amazing and stuff. But yeah, so is that what you meant? Does that answer your question? Or?
Yeah. I think so. And I think before we get into your picks, definitely, I'd love to hear more from you on Rockfield Studios and exactly how your fans help you get there and actually get involved in the recording process. Because, maybe there's other musicians doing that, but I don't know of any of that.
No one's doing it. I'm the only one that's
Tell us, Chris. What's it all about?
Okay, so we recorded the third album at Rockfield, and they're brilliant down there. It's family run. Kingsley owns it. Kingsley started the studio in '62, I think. And we were there in 2000, 2001. We did the way I feel today there. And then I had this brainwave, and there's two studios. There's the Quadrangle and the Coach House. I really like the Coach House. The Quadrangle, that's where like Bohemian Rhapsody was recorded. But the Coach House is where I think in 1 year it had 5 #1 albums come out of it, and they were in Britpop. It was like Catatonia, Cast, Was Story Morning Glory, and a couple of others. When you record at the Coach House, you come out and you go up it's an old farm. It's a farm, but it's a working farm. And you go up the road, and they've got this big accommodation block, and it's fantastic. You walk in the front door, there's a huge living room, and then you go up some steps, and there's a huge dining room and a kitchen at the back, and then there's 7 doors that go off each. So if you all come out at the same time in the morning, it's like morning, and every single behind each door there's a big room with an ensuite, and so I phoned Lisa and I said, "Hey, do you remember me?" "Yeah, I remember you." I said, "Any chance I can come down and record and bring all my fans with me and fill each room with a couple of people?" "No problem, Chris." I said, "Give me a price for that." So she gave me a price for it, and then I went on to Kickstarter, and I said to my wife Karen, I went, "Kazza, what do you reckon then? Weekend at Rockfield, how much would you pay?" And she was like, "Charge them this," and I said, "No, I'll charge her £400 a room." And then I launched the Kickstarter, and they all sold out in like 10 minutes.
Incredible.
And I thought to myself, what I let myself in for?
Was there some nutters, or is it quite daunting to have all your fans around you trying to play in front of fans? Was there any?
I think what you said, Fran, was nutters.
I would not say nutters. I would not.
I thought, fucking hell. So anyway, I thought this is brilliant, and they all sent me the money. I paid the studio bill, and then we drove down there, and we had Chris Davis, the original drummer, me, and then and Charlie, and then another bass player. And we did this thing with 2 drum kits called Abstraction 12, which is this double album with 5 songs on it. It's absolutely mental. And so we rehearsed it, and then we went down there. And there was all these guys there, like from Denmark, and there's like,
okay, so it's not just British people; it's fans from all over all over Europe and the world.
There's a guy called Soren from Denmark. He always comes, and Stu and Terry and Mark and absolutely wonderful people, salt of the earth. Can't believe they're like, this is fucking amazing. They can't believe where they are. I can't. All my favourite records were made here, and the engineer was a bit like, okay, so we've got 15 people in the control room.
Sitting there, hands clasped, expectantly, yeah.
And then I still remain friends with John Leckie, the producer, so he comes down as well sometimes.
Amazing.
And he just sits around drinking beer, goes and sees Kingsley, who he's known since the 60s, and then, or 70s, and we just kind of, the first night we get there on Friday, we have a cooked meal around a huge table with I think there's about 17 of us there, and then we have a massive party, and then the next day we're in the studio recording all day, and then we have another party on Saturday night, and then we work all day Sunday, and then everyone goes home, and it's brilliant, and we get an album in the can, and everyone gets an album. And
it sounds incredible.
I'm trying to think of which band I'd like to do that experience with. But
yeah,
but I don't. Part of me doesn't want to see behind the curtain. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and also it's that thing of Chris. I think I can say you seem like a very nice guy. Now we're talking to you face to face. Definitely not as arrogant as you came across in the press, but I do wonder. Yeah.
Don't forget they made me like that.
The evil press. Whereas we're lovely neutral podcasters. Yeah, we know that. We know that.
Exactly.
Like when I was a teenager, one of my favorite bands was Radiohead, and I don't think I'd want to peek behind the curtain of Radiohead. I'm happy reading Ed O'Brien's diaries on the internet. That's absolutely fine by me.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I mean, it's a great way for me to record, and I think we've done it 8 times now. And do you know what? I actually did it with another band. I've done it with 2 other bands now.
Right,
because
okay.
This other band, I Am Lonely, a really great band from Nottingham, they came up to me and they said, "Can you produce us and help us out?" And I went, "Yeah." No, I said, "Where do you want to record?" And they were, "Well, we're going to have to go to a local studio." And I said, "Well, how about Rockfield in Wales? We get, it's all, we'll get fed, and we all get our own ensuite room." And well, we can't afford that. And I went, "Yes, you can. We do it like this." And they did the same thing. But they didn't do it via Kickstarter. They just went to their friends in the pub and said, "Do you want to come along and sponsor us?" And we just went down there and did the same thing. It was great.
Chris, you said you weren't focused on marketing, but I think you've stumbled across something here. I almost feel reluctant to share this with the wider world because I can see some kind of slimy A&R guy being like, "Aha, well, this is the way for the future."
Hello, this is a promo for a podcast about a playlist.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's called Playlist. Yeah. My name's Mike Lash, former actor, former comedian, former creative, former cool dude. This is
Kerry Mitchell, former musician, former art student, current cool dude.
We've created a playlist, a fucking brilliant playlist.
The best playlist ever, to the point where we spoke to each other about how good the playlist is, and that we wanted to be the people at a party who's putting on the music and only putting on a few seconds of the music before changing the song, because everyone loves those guys at a party.
That's us. So each week we have a guest and they have to choose one song to define them as a human person. One song for me, Mike Lash, to sing right at them.
And then, because Mike is not the best person in his family, we've incorporated his mum to give her insight into each song, which will maybe help the guest to define themselves as a person.
But really, we probably shouldn't get bogged down in the format of the podcast. It's really heavily edited, so it's not actually that boring. It's quite short, so I really think you'll like it. Kerry's kids are home, so it's probably the end of this promo.
It is. What was it? www.playtheshare.com, and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Underrated.
That was the end of part 1. And this is now part 2, where we're going to ask Chris to talk about 5 songs that he's picked from acts that he feels are underrated. So I mean, Chris, when I asked you to do this, you sent me the bands and the songs pretty quickly, so I guess that wasn't very difficult for you to do. But was there
Pretty quick, I sent them straight
yeah,
away.
well, I was just like, oh, maybe we could do this, and then you sent me the bands, and I thought, oh, and then I said, oh, like, can you maybe pick a song? I know that might be difficult, and you were like, no problem, here we go, and I was like, fantastic, thank you, wonderful guest.
I could have done another. The thing is, I'm thinking now, I wish I'd have said this other band.
Well, you still can.
We can bring them up. We can bring them up for sure. But I was wondering, is there a theme that kind of unites the 5 picks that you have? Have you maybe any relationships with any of them? Have you worked on them? Or was it just kind of 5 bands on your mind at the time that you thought, no, I want to talk about them and raise their profile a bit more?
I always think if you think about things too much, then, it's best to just. So I thought, well, I was lying in bed at the time and I was just thinking, this one. There was Ambulance Limited.
Yes. I mean, maybe we can start with that. So that was Heavy Lifting by Ambulance Limited. Yeah.
Yeah. What a tune that is.
How did you discover this band? Is it a band that you loved when it came out, or is it just something you just...
I don't know anything about that band is so weird because I was given a promo at the I can't remember when, maybe around 2003, something like that. I can't remember. And I was given this promo probably by, I don't know who gave me it. I used to get given these promos.
Nice.
Have a listen to this. You go in to do an interview at a radio station, and they throw some of their promos at you.
That's great.
So I always used to listen to them, and then this one struck me as, and I found that I listened to the whole album, and I found that their music was like incredibly good, like really polished and very American, great vocals, and I had no idea what happened to the band. I mean, the singer was this handsome geezer, and I don't know what happened to them. He never made another record, as far as I know. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you what Wikipedia says happened. So this song is from their record called LP. They released another one called New English in 2006 before dissolving after a lengthy battle with TVT Records. Is what Wikipedia says.
So they were killed by the record
industry. It sounds yeah.
I think like some members have gone on to play with like the Killers and stuff up there, and I think and Father John Misty, I think one of them plays with him now. But yeah, like I'm surprised I had no idea. This is so me, this album. And it's like, and obviously in 2004 I worked in a record store, so it's kind of strange that I wasn't aware of this.
Well, do you know what, Fran? I was aware of this band, surprisingly, and I think I came across them through something like Kazaa or Groove Shark or another illegal method. But the only song I knew from this album was Primitive brackets The Way I Treat You, which is a brilliant song. It's kind of a bluesy indie banger. I would summarize it at. But I love that song, and every time I've tried to go into that album and their songs, it just doesn't gel with me. And when I put on this song, I was like, oh, this is a bit sun trippy, road trippy, a bit more Fran than me in terms of our personal tastes. But then there's this breakdown, and the ending is totally different. So when I listened to it again, I was in a new frame of mind, and I was much more open to it, and appreciated it much more. But again, we've been talking about this. This song sounds so different to the other song that I know on the album, and I haven't listened to the whole album yet, but I do wonder if it is again another situation like that.
The first track on the album's this like 8-minute build-up. It's something that Spiritualized will be proud of, you know.
Yeah, I thought, do you know Guided by Voices, Chris? It sounds like a polished version of Guided by Voices, and then it goes into.
It does that,
and then it's kind of transformed into a bit like chilled out Pink Floyd near the end. The acoustic guitar comes out, but yeah, it's just so up my street, and I was like shocked for I've never heard this before. So thank you for introducing me to Ambulance Limited. It's sad to know that they've only done like 1.5 albums, but
and it's that guy's voice. I mean, I wish I could sing like that. And the thing is, he hasn't gone on to do anything since then.
Maybe he just got pissed off at all of the issues with the record label.
Maybe he's Sam Fender. He's changed his name.
You heard it here first. Conspiracy rock theories with Babs, Fran, and Chris Olley. So I guess, Chris, that was maybe your most rock pick of the playlist, because one of your other picks was Loss by Plaid, who are from Warp, that you've mentioned that you were a big fan of. So how come you picked them?
Plaid, you see, I picked them because everyone always talks about Aphex Twin and Square Pusher and Autechre, and Plaid kind of like get a little bit lost. I think maybe they don't.
I'd never heard of them, and this is totally up my street once again.
Sublime.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I've written some, very astute music criticism. I wasn't expecting a bleepy bloopy 21st century Mario game computer game beginning. It really surprised me because this was the first song that I listened to, but I absolutely loved this because the synth line and the percussion are entrancing. It's repetitive but not boring. I lost myself in this completely.
It's electronic krautrock. It's brilliant, and the thing about it is what I find about Plaid is when you listen to their album, you can tell it's them straight away.
Right.
They do this weird. They use these. I don't know what it is, like major seventh with 9 suspended fifth or something, but they bring this chord in. And it's like immediately, it's almost like they patented this kind of series of chords, and they bring them in, and immediately it's Plaid. It's quite amazing, really. The sumptuousness of the sounds that they create, and there's another thing. I don't know if you know. There's a company called Electron who make these drum machines. They're quite complex, and the guys from Electron, they must have given them this drum machine, and they did this album with it, this music with this drum machine, and it's like you can immediately tell it's them. And I think that they did sort of a limited edition 12-inch, but it's up on YouTube, and I often listen to that. I put it on and I just listen to it. It's a bit like Fortet or something. You can just like listen to it, and it's like this electronic music that's somehow really engaging and draws you in, and you can't quite put your finger on why.
I think there's only a few record labels when you can hear a band and think, okay, they're on that label. And as soon as I heard it, I thought, this sounds like a bit Warp vibes. And I've then looked, they're on Warp. And like, you can't do that with many bands. I guess maybe Factory in a way. But I put down, this is perfect background music for an anxiety-inducing sci-fi computer game. And then I looked at Wikipedia. They've done the soundtracks for computer games.
Right,
so.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I think after 4 minutes, the house that really warmth synth comes in and really lifts it. So it was something I don't tend to listen to, but it is up my street. I think the synth sound was wonderful.
Yeah, I think the other band I kind of had written down for this, and maybe one of the other picks, was Boards of Canada as well, who are another war band. Another band that I've only heard one of their albums and get a bit obsessed with it, but then I'm like, whoa, this is too electronic for me now. I need to go and have a break. So
and then randomly Maximo Park came out on the Warp label and changed it all.
What? Did they?
Yeah, Maximo Park, who are a Warp band. It was like, okay, we've now got an indie band suddenly on Warp Records, but there you go.
Learning some things.
Lone Lady,
yeah.
She's on Warp.
Yeah, that is not who I'd expect either. I think, look, if you don't know her, Fran, I think she's up your street. But
I guess they got to change. I mean, like, Nick Cave is on Mute, isn't it? And obviously Mute Records with nothing like Nick Cave when it started, So that's not, you've got to diversitise. So so we move on to Gaz Coombs, which you're seeing this week, Chris.
Yeah, Gaz Coombs is a weird one because obviously he's in the singer in Supergrass, like a British institution, really. Supergrass were this band that started off kind of almost like a sort of Buzzcocks-y, much better though, like a really great band, and they were very young, and then they developed and made better and better records, I think Gaz Coombs is, it's one of those things where when you leave and you do a solo career, you might think that all the Supergrass fans will go with you, but they don't. My son Charlie, he got me into it really, and he was like, listen to this, and you listen to it, and it's like Scott Ford, it's like the Beach Boys. I mean, the production is incredible, and then I just go and see him live because he's always going out about playing live and often on his own, and it's a bit like watching. I used to go and watch John Martin a lot when I was younger. because John Martin, you could always go and see him because he played about 350 gigs a year. So he was always playing somewhere nearby, and I used to go and watch John Martin, and he would be different every time. But the thing about Gaz Coombs is that he reminds me a bit of when I used to go to John Martin gigs. He's got that kind of, he's just a great, he's like proper, you know, you stand there and you watch him. I really recommend going to see him, regardless of what you think of his music or what you think of Supergrass. Just go and see Gaz Coombs on his own and just watch it. It's absolutely mesmerising.
I saw him play a festival, but it wasn't the best conditions because I think everyone there was like shouting for "all right," and it felt a bit slow for him, you know. But he had a lovely hat, and he still seemed to enjoy himself. But he didn't play this. He had a lovely hat, but
what kind of hat, please? I want the detail. Was it trilby? Was it straw hat?
Let's say more strawberry than straw hat. A straw hat would be quite interesting. But yeah, I never heard 2020 before, and I was shocked, to be fair, because I thought it was brilliant, and yeah, it's really atmospheric. It's got a soulful piano, great backing singers, and always.
The back and all the girls singing.
And he almost sounds a little bit like Tom York as well at some points, which I thought was interesting. But it makes sense, you know. This is, if you're going to go solo, be different to Supergrass, because like, what's the point otherwise, you know? So this makes total sense. Like, I don't think Supergrass would have been allowed by the fan base to maybe do something like this. So, you know, it completely makes sense. And yeah, I love this track. This is the best on the playlist for me.
And the thing about it is, it goes back to that thing about making music that's in between the cracks of your record collection. So when I hear the Gaz Coombs stuff, I'm thinking, I know, I can hear that he's a massive Scott Walker fan, and I can hear that he's into the Beach Boys now. But he's done, you know, you got your Scott Walker, and he's put one in the middle, you know, and it doesn't sound like either, but you can hear the references. And I think, you know, he should be headlining the Pyramid stage. I mean, I really believe that. If you go and see him, it's like he's absolutely nuts. He's so up there. But I just think, like, watch his performance on Jules Holland. It's crazy. And then the other thing is, I'm a bit of a krautrocker, and he puts all the krautrock references in there, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, he has a new album out today, literally today, called "Turn the Car Around."
No, I've been hearing it all fucking day. I mean, like, everyone is playing. It's coming out of all these different rooms. It's great.
Is it a completely different vibe to 2020? What sort of direction has he gone this time?
This album's more mainstream.
Oh,
it's very it's very well produced. All his stuff is really. I mean, he does it himself.
Yeah, he wrote and produced that track.
And he's a bona fide genius, that guy. I would put him in the category of genius.
Yeah, this was an interesting one for me because we haven't done Supergrass as overrated, but I would like to, because I feel that Supergrass are one of those bands that people really, really rave about, and I haven't quite got it, to be honest. I really like Movin' and a few other things, but maybe because there's something a bit melodic about it, it doesn't quite gel. I can be a bit grumpy with nice sounding music. And when this started, I thought, okay, the xylophone synth melody line is interesting, but it didn't grab me. But then these kind of menacing synths come in, and it changes and it changes and it changes. And yeah, I really love the choir as well. And I really enjoyed it on re-listening, but I still feel, and maybe I need a bit more time with it, it feels like lots of disjointed ideas rather than one coherent song for me. So I was pleasantly surprised because it wasn't the sound that I was expecting. I was expecting something a bit more Supergrassy, but I think with me, it didn't immediately hit, but I'm not saying that it wouldn't in future. That's how I felt about it.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
This underrated thing is difficult, isn't it? I had to look it up in the dictionary. I think the dictionary it talks about value, doesn't it? In the dictionary, it says something like
I've not looked it up.
Undervalued.
You believe should have had more value, or something like that. It's quite interesting when you look stuff up in the dictionary. I once did when they did the when Beggars did the Dream is Sweeter Than the Taste film. they asked me to introduce it on the opening in the cinema, and I decided to do a lecture on failure, on failing. Yeah, so I thought, I'll do a talk about failure. And I looked it up in the Oxford Dictionary, and there's no definition for it. All it says is the opposite of success. Now, success is completely subjective. One man's success is another man's nightmare, and vice versa. A lot of rock stars, like, for example, become extremely successful, and they don't think they're big enough and shoot their brains out or something, but it really is completely subjective. But I was fascinated by the idea that when you look in the Oxford Dictionary, you always get a definition, and in this case, it said it's just the opposite of success, which is not a definition.
When you started the band, what was your idea as a success for you personally?
To get on John Peel.
So there you go.
And you managed that.
We did 5 Peel sessions. And I was absolutely like, and then when we did Jules Holland, I mean, that really was like, wow, because I used to have posters of Debbie Harry on my bedroom wall, and she was standing there. When you play on Jules Holland, you play like in a circle. And we were at 6 o'clock, and Blondie were at 12 o'clock. And while I was playing, all I could see was Debbie Harry sitting on the drum rollers going like that.
Oh, brilliant.
That must have been surreal.
And all I could think was how many pictures of her I'd jerked off over when I was a teenager. And for fuck's sake, don't drop your plectrum, Chris, You're like, these amazing things happen to you in your life. I remember sitting there, I went in, because in the BBC you can get a free haircut. Yeah.
Fran,
they've got this.
need to get in on that.
They've got this makeup department. And you go in, and they tar you up for the TV, and you have to put something on your face, otherwise you look like a ghost.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Spector's sitting next to me, and we talked at length about children and stuff like that. And I remember walking out down the corridor and going, how weird has my life just got? Like things like that happening, and Terry Hall coming into our using our toilet, and playing a gig and looking out and seeing Terry Hall standing there dancing. All these weird things happened to me that were absolutely amazing, and I remember, like, when we got our first Peel session, I remember thinking, that's it, I've done it. Anything after this is a bonus.
That sounds quite healthy. Much better attitude to have than I must sell out stadiums.
The only other thing I really wanted to do was play on Top of the Pops. That would have been great. But
were you close at all? Or?
Yeah, we got to number 42 in the charts.
What song was that?
I Owe You Love. Under the Milky Way
Fran,
Tonight.
you should have bought more copies, and then you could have. I was too young.
Well, see, I bought that album in Seattle, but it was a year after it came out, unfortunately.
I've got a really interesting story about I Owe You Love. I left Wakefield. I finished art college. I started at university in Nottingham, and I studied photography. And my mate that I was in about, he did me this cassette, but he didn't put any of the. He didn't give me a piece of paper with it saying what was on it. And there's all these bands on it. I'm listening to it. I'm still hearing stuff now coming out of the radio. I'm like, oh my God, that's on that cassette. And there was this song on this cassette called Under the Milky Way Tonight. Now, while we're talking about songs that were underrated, this is like the pinnacle of all underratedness ever. This is like Under the Milky Way is the most underrated. I can't imagine why it didn't go to number 1 all around the world. And I always remember thinking to myself, if I ever got into a band that really made it, what I would do is I would rewrite that song, and then I would get it to number 1 in the charts, and then everybody, and then it would be like that film, The Joker, at the end when you're on the talk show, I would go, guess what? it's Under the Milky Way Tonight by the church. And I would make the church rich and famous and put them where they belonged. This actually happened. So I did. Well, no, it didn't, because we got to number 42, not number 1. But the thing is that what was great about it was I did it and no one knew about this band, right? And then I did it and I went out and did some press for it. Well, I think the record label were like, this is really good. We've got to use this as a single. It reminds me of something. I don't know what. And I just kept my mouth shut. And then the next minute, this film comes out called Donnie Darko, right? And it's this underground cult smash. And guess what song is in it? Under the Milky Way Tonight. So I start getting inundated with emails going, really great, man, to see 6x7 in this film.
So, Fran, you weren't the only one that spotted that connection.
But I've obviously I've known that song for a long time. But it was only last year when someone pointed out to me that song sounds like the Church, because I had never heard that Church song. So I had like 18 years and I never heard Under the Milky Way.
So in a way, it worked. It did work
because
But then what happened? But the story gets even weirder, because what happened then was the church reformed because of Donnie Darko, right? So everyone's going up to the church going, we'll give you X amount of money to play over here. So anyway, we do our first gig of The Way I Feel Today at the Bull and Gate in London. It's like a small gig, a warm, with press, and all that. And I find out that just down the road at the Underworld, Camden Underworld, the church are playing. Then my manager phones me up and he says, look, BBC Two, they do this thing called Out and About, and they go out and about and they record sound checks and talk to the bands and stuff, yeah. And they're going to come into the Bull and Gate and, so be nice if you see them. And then, so I saw them with the microphones and that, and then we finished sound checking. I walked past and the girl talked to me and I said to her, oh, did you get everything you wanted? She went, yeah. She said, this is so fucking weird, but we've just been down this venue down the road, and there's this fucking band, and they're playing the same fucking song. I went, no. Then I went out to do the press for the album, and I find out that Under the Milky Way Tonight went to number 1 in Belgium.
Hey, where I'm living. There we go. Yeah.
I go to this big. The big radio station, whatever it is, there in Belgium, really posh,
Studio Brussels. Who knows? Yeah.
What's it called?
Well, there's the main kind of rock station is one called Studio Brussels. The music, and
it looks like it's all glass and it's really, really kind of modern and beautiful in there and everything. And I go in to do this interview with this DJ. She looks at me and she goes, "All right, welcome, Chris. Why?" And I look at her and I said, why what? What do you mean, why? Why have you done this? This is sacrilege. This song, you've murdered. And I said, oh, I didn't think anyone knew it. She went, it went to number 1. It went to number 1 in Canada as well.
It was a song that introduced me to the band. So there you go. It worked for me.
And the thing is, if you go into YouTube and then you look at all the comments underneath, they're all going, everyone's kind of like slating it, because it's like, someone's like, saying 6x write your own original songs, why don't you? And then Steve Kilby is in the church on his Facebook. He was extremely annoyed about it.
Right.
he was pissed off that we'd done this,
and you were just trying to do an homage.
It's like Beggar said to me, if they were going to sue you, you'd have been sued by now.
Well, let us hope that we're not the initiators of something.
You've got another song, 2020.
Yes, I wondered about
coincidence
that.
Or
by Sons.
Oh man, how weird is that?
Are you trying to? Was COVID a good time for you? Are you trying to hark back to that?
I wanted to put Sons in there, but I went over to look at the tune, because I couldn't remember what it was called, and then it was like, oh man, this is called 2020 as well. But that's Sons are again. I find them really interesting, the way that they approach making music, and that song with the bottleneck guitar, with that making that a sort of this whining kind of Robbie Krieger-esque sort of guitar going through it. I really like them. I often listen to their albums, yeah. And his voice is just like, it's crazy. I mean, he's got this almost like I don't know how to describe his voice, but it's like, who we're going to have in the band singing, anyone but him. And it's like, he's the singer in the band. He's like, you do it. All right, then. And he just kind of does it like he doesn't want to do it. It's brilliant. It's like a sort of Marky Smith on Mogadon or something,
I saw him do it live on KEXP, and he's kind of like singing like, I don't know, as if there's a gun off camera kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you know Sons, Fran?
No, I'd never heard it before. That riff was really interesting. I think maybe after the whole song, it got a bit too repetitive for me, and I was maybe expecting something else to happen, like maybe like a firework or a sparkle or something. So it didn't really work for me. But it reminded me of a Northern Ireland band called Django Django. I don't know if you know them. Yeah.
Yes.
It's got that sort of like mix of like of rhythms and guitar sounds. But yeah, not my favorite on the playlist. But I did enjoy like the falling down the stairs kind of guitar sounds, sort of thing.
Nicely described.
But yeah, I just wish there was something else maybe at the end to offer a bit more for me.
Well, I thought I didn't know this. So if someone had asked me, okay, Sons, who do you think they are? I would have said, oh, it's some kind of obscure electro act that's on like the Quietus's best of lists. And I thought I didn't know them, but it turns out I'd not only saved this song, but another song called Paralyzer. So when this started, I was like, oh yeah, to take Fran's terminology, the falling down the stairs guitar. Like absolutely like perfect music for an advert. And yeah, I absolutely love this. And it just, this and actually your next pick, Chris, that we'll get into, like there was this period when I think I just got Spotify where I was like, oh my God, like all the music, all the time, everywhere. And I just went down so many playlists and saved so many songs that I then didn't listen to again. So I think I saved this back in 2017 and I don't know how many times I've listened to it or anything. And I'm like, oh, I really need to listen to music more mindfully because this is totally up my street once again. I wrote, it reminded me of Mirwais a little bit, the Madonna producer. Have you ever heard his solo stuff, Ron?
No.
Well,
yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, and
brilliant.
And I thought this, and some other bands that I don't know of, but you've. I couldn't quite put my finger on what else it sounded like, but it's a lovely dark atmosphere, and once again with the sort of. I've written spooky ghost voice and that disco drum beat, which is very kind of noughties indie revival. And I thought again, Wikipedia summarized it quite interesting. They said. So this band are firmly wedged between the experimental and indie sections of your local record shop. The band's instantly identifiable brand of vampiric electro rock has unraveled like a scroll. So
vampiric electro rock.
Very plosive, but lovely stuff.
That's a new genre we've learned today.
There we go.
Chris, speaking of genres, did you enjoy critics telling you what genre you belong to? Did you find it interesting how they described your band? Is it like post-rock or post-Britpop or electro-rock, or what sort of terms did you get?
We were post-rock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was the term back in...
We were in there with Mogwai.
Such a vague... I've never understood post-rock. Post-punk, I understand. Post-rock, no. What is that?
Post-rock, that's where some... it was described by I think the guy that coined the phrase. He described it as you take the beginning of "Gimme Shelter" by the Rolling Stones. Mm-hmm. You know the beginning of that, and that's it. And you stretch it out for 8 minutes. That's post-rock.
I'd say 6 by 7 a bit more than that.
There's always another term. Every 2 years, they wanted to have a new little box to market, didn't they? Really?
I mean, that just continues now. Like, I think it's even worse now. I haven't got Spotify anymore, but I miss the whole like they tell you what genres you listen to, and you're like, I what? I do.
Has 6x7 ever been approached to have your music in like a film or TV show or anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, we had We had Another Love Song was used by Danny Boyle in Sunshine.
Oh, really? That's a good. I like it from one.
Yeah, I think it was the trailer.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, various stuff's been used. There was a film with John Peel in it. It was called Dwarves of Death. I think they used candlelight in that. I don't know. It hasn't happened much. We nearly got a Range Rover advert once, which would have been like, I think it was £180,000 or something like that. We would, and it was just when we did our own. It was the '04 album.
Yeah.
And it's the opening track, and it had this line in it that was on an open road. Look, I'm on an open road. Don't tell me I'm a rebel. On an open road, looking for a cause I know I'll never find. And they were like, this Range Rover, and we were absolutely fucking hanging on with it, and it went to the Black Keys instead. But yeah, we've had stuff on like TV but nah, not really.
6x7 the musical? No.
I'm hanging in there. I'm waiting.
Right. Okay. Let's get to Chris's final pick, and then I think I'm sure we have a few more questions. So your final pick, Chris, was Cavern of Antimatter, TARDIS Symbols. So why did you pick this one?
Oh, I love Cavern of Antimatter. They're absolutely brilliant. I've got all their albums, and they're I've never seen them live. They live in Berlin, I think, and but it's the guy from Stereolab, Tim Gay. Yeah. And he's gone and done it again. He's taken all his krautrock, his love of krautrock, and he's found another way to make a new kind of krautrock, and it's absolutely brilliant.
I knew Stereolab, but I was not aware of this band at all, and I thought interesting title, TARDIS Symbols. I assume it's a Doctor Who reference. Yeah. You know what? I put on the playlist in the background while I was working from home, and then this song started, and I was enjoying it, and then it kept on going, and I was still enjoying it, but I just carried on working, and I thought, hang on,
when does it end?
Has this gone through twice? So this is the best working from home music out there, I would say, and it kept me interesting, and I think 7 minutes in, it brings in this like warbling guitar sound, which I thought was brilliant, and it put me in a better headspace. So people say in the Spotify era, you have to have like a boom 2-minute hook, but and I'm happy that there's still these 12-minute beautiful epics, which I've always kind of liked. Hence yourself and other I like Sea Power or British Sea Power, and they've got quite a few 10-minute opuses. So I'm always a fan of.
But I prefer 6x7s to Sea Power's ones, as our previous listeners might realise. But yeah.
But yeah, Babs, you're a fan.
So this was another one that I saved back in 2017, along with melody and high feedback tones. Completely forgotten about it. I actually thought that because there's a Belgian band called Creature with the Atom Brain, and I think I just kind of melded the two in my mind. I thought this was an obscure Belgian band that I saved in, but no, it turns out the guy from Stereolab, another band where I've got 3 songs saved by Stereolab. Again, I know about them, but I don't know more. I think Fran, you're a bigger fan.
I probably know 2 or 3 tracks.
2 or 3 tracks.
There's always like that one song which is on in a lot of montages in the 90s.
Yeah.
I also get the titles. There we go. Yeah.
But it's. I'm thinking because I hadn't realised that I'd written this, but I think Chris, you were a little bit dismissive about Chemical Brothers and Fatboy Slim and all those people, but actually that's kind of who I wrote down for this because.
No, I didn't mean to be dismissive. I meant. That's what people were listening to,
okay.
Rather than going to gigs. Yeah. No, I love all that stuff.
Okay, good.
I love Fatboy Slim and the Chemical Brothers and all that.
Because I was thinking, like, it's not a million miles away from some of the stuff that you were doing. Yeah, no, I recently guested on a podcast where I had to talk about "Dig Your Own Hole" by Chemical Brothers in great detail. And yeah, that's what it reminded me of. definitely you could see the influences there. But yeah, I think Fran, you summarized it much better than I could. I was trying to kind of write down what I felt and what I thought it sounded like, and I was like, I can't write nice synths, menacing synths, in many other ways. So yeah, there's a review which talks about, it's got pastoral guitars, flute-like synths, vast constellations of sparkling metallic detail. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you, Pitchfork or whoever it was. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. And again, I was like, God damn it, I keep listening to like a couple of songs from an album and being like, great, saving them. And then I forget about them and I don't come back to them. So I'm in this constant like, want to listen to new music, but also really need to kind of trim down my library. And I never know what the balance is. And I think sometimes I'm more in the mood for discovering new music, and sometimes I'm more in the mood to listen to old classics over and over again. But yeah, no, thank you, Chris, for kind of reintroducing me to two bands that I already liked but had forgotten about. I thought this was a pretty solid playlist of underrated acts.
Yeah, I mean, the other one I would add to it is Thykor Sandra, who I was in the studio with last week, and I've just been listening to his stuff. I mean, fucking hell, it's absolutely incredible.
Excellent.
Do you know a band called Coil?
I do not. Fran?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Check out Coil.
Excellent.
I mean, they're dead now. I mean, there's Thykor Sandra still alive, but the other two are dead. But I mean, just listen to it. It's
Well, Chris, what normally happens is any band that gets mentioned also gets put on a Spotify playlist that we make. So the Spotify playlist is going to be the 5 tracks that you've picked, and then any other band we've mentioned, and we've mentioned a lot. So if it's on Spotify, it's going in there. And actually, one of the questions I had that I didn't ask at the beginning was, I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see that most of the picks that you have are kind of more modern picks. I think the earliest song is the 2004 Ambulance Limited one. But I wondered whether you had any underrated, now that we've discussed the definition, any underrated peers, bands that you played with. You mentioned a few like Bivouac and others, but any other bands from kind of your era of making music at the beginning that you think got overlooked at the time?
Yeah, like any band who supported you, who never sort of went on to do what you thought it should.
Oh, do you know what? The trouble was that every band that supported us became really big.
Those pricks.
I mean, you name it, every single band, we were like, oh, they're pretty good, let's take them on tour. And then about a month later, they were like massive.
So you have the opposite. Like Fran really likes a band and then they're cursed to oblivion, whereas you like a band and they become more famous than you. So
yeah, you need to become an A&R man.
Together, you need to make some kind of weird superhero team, clearly, musical superheroes. So yeah, as well as Kasabian, what other bands supported you that became massive?
Muse.
Yeah. The boys from Tainmouth, yeah.
The Libertines.
Wow.
Libertines is an interesting.
Oh God, I can't. There's I made a list of them once, and I was absolutely horrified.
And have they returned the favour by offering anything?
Yeah, Muse actually offered us to support them at the Isle of Dogs at this massive outdoor thing. Yeah, and I said no.
Oh.
He said, why? And I said, I think your band sucks.
Well, at least you're not sending out, so that's a good thing.
Absolutely not.
No, I just can't stand that kind of bombastic stadium rock, Oh, Snow Patrol supported us as well.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah, up in Edinburgh. About half the band ended up going back to their house and getting drunk with them. I didn't. I went back to the hotel, but yeah. There are loads. But to answer your question, bands that were back then that should have been bigger. Mm-hmm. No, because 6x7, because we were the only ones really that were at the bottom of the heat and stayed there.
There we go. You heard it here. Chris agrees with us of our assessment that 6x7 are underrated. How nice and surprising to hear that.
True. Oh, that was something else you talked about as well. You talked about the fact that maybe the band didn't tour enough to become big. Oh, we did a lot of touring. And you talked about festivals as well. I mean, we played Glastonbury like 11 times or something. I mean, we played Reading Festival 3 times, Phoenix Festival. We played every festival. Benny Cassim, we played really high up on the bill. We played every festival in Europe. We did a lot, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I've never seen you on a bill. I've just been unlucky to never see 6x7 live.
Maybe you did, and you just were like tripping or something. Or maybe we were so crap it just passed you by. You never know. You never know.
Well, listen, I mean, Fran, I don't know if you have any more questions.
You've got your podcast on Facebook, haven't you? Is that getting released soon?
I've just been sent the film footage for that.
Cool.
I'm gonna go through it and then edit it and put it up. But yeah, Fran, I've written 2 books. If you're interested about the band, the songs, and you want to know about them, I've written a book called The Things I Make, and it's got 51 lyrics in it. It's got a 5,000 word essay, 51 lyrics, and then it's got an essay on each song and what it's about and how it was recorded and what. And it's, you know, I went to a Billy Bragg gig and there's a great guy who's a 6x7 fan, and he does Billy Bragg's merch. He always wears a 6x7 fan t-shirt when he's doing Billy's merch. And Billy wrote this book in that format, essay, 50 songs, and then I copied it basically, and I did my own version of it, and I gave him. He bought 2 copies, and he gave one to Billy, and then I said to him a couple of months ago, I said, "Did Billy read my book?" And he said, "Yeah, he did." And I said, "What did he say?" And he went, "I hope he's all right now." It's like, this guy's having a nervous breakdown. Brilliant. But yeah, and then I've written an autobiography as well called Counting Clouds in a Clear Blue Sky, which it's got a lot of stories in it about the, you know, like the interviews that we did and all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately you can't buy that anymore because I've withdrawn it now. I haven't got a copy of it here either. But you can get the other one on Amazon, and that's worth getting. It's only £7 or something. It's worth getting if you want to know about the songs and what they're about and how my nervous breakdown was unfolding over like 7 albums, you know.
Right.
But it's all it's mainly the early stuff. It's all the early stuff.
We will definitely link to that in the show notes. Yeah, brilliant.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Is there anything else you want us to plug at all, Chris, or do you want us to wait until you release some new material, your podcast? And
I'm doing a release on when's this coming out? Thursday.
Yeah. Well, but we can delay it if you want us to. If there's something you want us to.
No, I'm doing a release on Friday.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I do this krautrock thing, and it's called 6x7 Radio Bremen.
Yep.
And it's like live. What I try and do is I try and do little live sessions. Radio Bremen was a radio station in Germany which used to play a lot of the early krautrock stuff before anyone else did, and they used to do sessions. And so I kind of like do that, and I'm releasing this as with a Walkman. You get a Walkman, a Radio Bremen Walkman with a cassette in it with the album in, and that's going to come out next Friday.
Again, marketing, Chris. You're a great marketer.
Again, I'm honestly, Chris, you're brilliant.
I'm just trying to like survive. I've just started doing Facebook now because I mean we've had Facebook up for a long time, but I've never really bothered with it, and I've been doing this online marketing course, and you know, this girl that I'm doing it with, she's like, you got to do every day. You got to post something. So I've started doing it, and I'm sort of sitting here in my room, playing old 6x7 songs and putting them up, and it's really kind of kicked the whole thing into life. And I've started like doing advertising on it and all this sort of thing, because it would be nice to get the band out to a few more people, I think, you know.
Great to see you posting.
And I guess maybe a nice way to finish is what are your upcoming plans apart from the Radio Bremen Walkman? When's the next Rockfield date? What direction are you going in, Chris?
I'm going down to Rockfield on the first weekend in February.
Great.
And that's with the whole posse again. last time we didn't do it that we just paid for it ourselves, but this time the whole posse's coming down, and I'm taking the bass player and the guitar player from I Am Lono, and we're gonna record together there, much in the same way that we did the Dream On stuff that I did at Rockfield and the Walls of Dada.
Mhm.
So I've got this I've got this light system that I've built, and someone's built it for me actually, and it's a box with switches on it with lights, and then out of that comes cables, and that goes to the musicians, and they have the light boxes in front of them. And when I switch the lights on, they have to do different things. So I'm orchestrating the music as it's happening.
That sounds.
So, for example, when the first light, like the drummer isn't allowed to play. When the second light comes on, he's allowed to play cymbals. When the third light comes on, he's allowed to play a beat. And when the fourth light comes on, he's allowed to just go mad. And so what you can do is I do it live. It's absolutely brilliant. People, we do these massive crescendos where the drummers go mad, and then all of a sudden everybody stops at the same time, and they think we've rehearsed it for years. And it's just a light telling people what to do.
I think Brian Eno does some similar production techniques with.
Well, that's interesting, because when you make music, I always find that the very first thing you do is the best, and everything else is chasing your tail. So you pick up a guitar, and you'll be like, and you start writing a song, and then you go, oh, I'll go and do it properly now, and it's never the same.
Yeah.
And so I devised this system to capture music as it's being written. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to just jam, because it just sounds chaotic and crap. So what you want to do is you want the music to build, and then you want it to break down and stop. And this light system does that. And if you go onto Bandcamp and you listen to The Walls of Dada, the very last album that we did, so it was me, Charlie, and Pete from the Dandies, and we used this light system at Rockfield to record music, and there's like 5 hours of it, and it's amazing. It's just it sounds like we've been doing it for years, but it was all improvised. It's all done on the spot. And if you go to the 6x7 Bandcamp page, there's a series of albums called Dream On, and the first two, Dream On 1 and 2, were done like that at Rockfield as well, with this light box machine. So what we're doing now is we're going to go down on the first week in February, and we're going to do it again, but with 2 other people.
Amazing. And
the first thing you have to do is you have to grab hold of them and go, when that light's on, you don't play.
We did film that as well, like a live session.
Could do.
That'd be quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
The Fran marketing twist there.
Consider it done, Fran.
Welcome.
We'll call it a Frano video.
Well, because if you've got all these lights, you need to have, it sounds like a visual thing as well as an audio thing.
I know the lights are tiny.
Oh, okay.
They're like this, the sort of light you get on a fuzz box, on a pedal. It's that. It's tiny.
Maybe to make it more visual, we can have spotlights with colours. But now,
Fran, you're giving away this for free, man.
And apart from that, tomorrow I've got to go to Tip. I've got to drop some stuff off.
That's important.
What are you dropping off, Chris?
That's what
we want to hear. What are you dropping off?
Just an old bed frame. I've got to drop that off. I took the mattress today, and then what else have I got to do?
That's a bit of a pain in the ass to put the frame on the car, no? To take it.
Yeah, some bed frames. I can get them in.
Good.
I've got a big Rolls Royce that I always drive
Is
around.
Is that? Chris, we honestly can't thank you enough. We were, we didn't know how this was going to go. We were like, oh God.
And I've just waffled on for ages.
It's exactly what we wanted, Chris. You've told us some great stories, and you've been really open and honest. So we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Love you guys.
Have a lovely.
Good luck. Good luck with the tip, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
So thank you for completing this very special 6x7 interview special with Chris Olley. It's the second time that I've been on a podcast with an artist that I own the record for. It's kind of strange, but it's a privilege to be able to chat to these people, and hopefully we get to chat to some more of our favourite artists in the future. Just like Chris, we are also on social media. We have Twitter, which is OU Music Pod, Over Underrated Music Pod on Instagram, and we're on YouTube, Over Underrated Music Pod, and you can even email us at overunderatedmusicpod@gmail.com. Until next time, guys, bye-bye.